Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Project 19. My name is Philip D'Souza, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Alyssa Vilches, for our fourth episode. I'm excited to announce our fourth guest to the show, who is a Brown University graduate and a softball member of the senior Canadian softball team, and is training for the Olympics. Alyssa, why don't you share a little bit more about how you know our guest today?
I'm very excited to introduce this guest. I met her at the 2013 World Juniors held here in Brampton, Ontario. I was the back row for Team Canada, and she played on the team at this time. She was the shortstop, and we played similar positions. I played middle infield, and I remember I was just so excited to watch her play. She was an awesome player and an even better person, and we got to know each other over the years when I trained with Team Canada at some of their clinics, and she helped out there, as well as just seeing each other at fall tournaments over time. So I'm really excited to introduce her. She's always been an inspiration to me, and let's introduce her, Phil.
Well, that's amazing, and welcome to the show, none other than Janet Leung.
Hi guys, I'm Janet Leung. First off, thanks to Phil and Alyssa for having me on Project 19. I'm very excited to be here. Like they mentioned, I currently play for the senior national women's softball team, and I started with the national team by joining the junior national team in 2013, and that's where I met Alyssa. She was our back girl, and then that's how I got into the system with Team Canada. And then throughout the years, just working through the, I guess, roster and just trying to make the senior national team from the junior team. And in 2018, I finally made the senior national team, and have been with them ever since. We also play for a professional team called the Canadian Wild during the summer as well. And that's my journey so far.
That's amazing. And we're so glad to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about your experience during this pandemic so far. We know it's been really rough on a lot of student athletes, especially, and we have you today to explain it a little bit more. So tell us a little bit about your experience during the pandemic.
I think I was pretty oblivious to the severity of COVID and like the impact it would have on all of our lives. When it all started back in March for me, we were just coming back from being together as a team. We had scheduled in a week break before we met back up again in California. And when I came home from Halifax when we were together originally, we thought we were back home for a week and then we would meet back up again. And that's when we started hearing about COVID and things getting shut down, and we just thought we were going to be delayed like maybe a few days or a week at most. But that's when it really kicked into high gear and everything just started locking down, and we realized that we probably weren't going to get together for at least a little while. And I think just learning how long we would actually be not together as a team took a pretty big hit on me especially, and I'm sure like the rest of my teammates as well. And then when the Olympics started getting thrown into it, with it being possibly postponed or canceled, we didn't know at the time. I think that's when I really was just hit by like all the emotions, I guess, surrounding COVID, with like fear, anxiety, stress, and just like all the unknowns that were happening in the world. And just, I think in the beginning it was hard to wrap my head around it, but a few months in, it was nice to be able to still stick together as a team through like Zoom calls and work through it together, because we're all facing these same emotions. And I think at that point, that's when I realized that this is something that I really can't control. If I focus on the things that I can't control, that's when things start to get messy, and it's just a lot easier to be able to focus on what I can control and focus on what I can do personally as a player, as a human, and stick with that in order to try to eliminate or at least decrease the amount of like stress and anxiety that I'm feeling.
I know it's been a difficult experience for everybody, and you mentioned a lot of hardships that was brought to light through the pandemic. Can you tell us your biggest struggle?
I would say my biggest struggle was dealing with all the change in plans and like all the unknowns, like everything switching up. I feel like normally I'm a pretty go with the flow person, but I still like to have some structure with either practice, like my schedule, things to look forward to, tournaments to look forward to. So with everything kind of jumbled up and the future being so unknown, I think that's what made things really hard for me, like finding that motivation in the beginning. It's like, am I actually working towards something? Like, will there actually be the Olympics to look forward to in the future? Like, am I just training for nothing? So I think that was one of the biggest hurdles that I had to overcome earlier on in the pandemic.
I know through the pandemic, a lot of people have tried to find other hobbies to keep them busy. Aside from training and practicing, did you find any new hobbies that you've come to enjoy?
I didn't realize pre-COVID how go I was. Like, I didn't realize how much I was pouring into like training or softball or just doing a lot of that stuff instead of making time for myself and like the things that I like, especially when the lockdown happened in the very beginning, like March, April, May. I found that I had a lot of extra time, like probably everyone else did. And that's when I started picking up the hobbies that I used to love to do, but didn't make time for before. But since I had the time, I was able to play my guitar again. I was able to just do I like doing random like crafts around the house. So like either around the house or just like little cards or calligraphy, that type of stuff, and actually started to pick up some reading again. I'm not the biggest reader, but I do enjoy it when I do. So yeah, I think having that reconnection with these hobbies helped a lot with just like my mental state and allowed me to make more time for myself. And I think that's when I realized that those things actually make me happy and kind of like ground me and like bring me back to reality, in order to be more fully present and like healthier for softball and for life.
For sure. And I know that a struggle with a lot of athletes right now, especially being bottled up at home, is the issue with releasing your emotions. And a lot of athletes, I know I was talking to Alyssa earlier and she was saying how even like hitting the gym or practicing, like that's a way of releasing your emotions. But when you're bottled up at home, everything is completely different. What has your experience been in that sense?
I think you just mentioning bottling up emotions, I think naturally I've been able to do that for a large part of my life. And I think, like you said, I didn't realize it, but I think training and going to the gym, playing softball, like that was my release. And I didn't realize that that was my release until it was kind of taken away from me. So I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty hard the first few months into the pandemic, because it was just like feeling all these emotions. I don't know what to do with it. Like, how do I either control it or like how do I move on and like work with this? So I think, especially since activity is a big part of my life and like that's how I release the tensions in my life, I think just finding ways to do that at home or in the backyard was what helped me, I guess, stay sane. It was nice just because we were just getting into the summertime. Weather was nice. I was able to go outside a lot and just get that vitamin D and just be able to release my energy. If it was just throwing a ball off the wall or running little laps in my backyard, I think just having some form of activity still helped me feel somewhat kind of normal.
Going back to your conversation about your mental performance coach, can you tell us a little bit about what you learned from them and how it transferred into your experience with COVID?
I think since in the beginning of the pandemic, we really had no access to facilities, or we couldn't go out to the diamond to practice together or anything like that. And I think at the time in the beginning of the pandemic, the Olympics still weren't officially postponed yet. So it was still kind of up in the air whether it would happen or not. And we still wanted to be as fully prepared as we could with the resources we had. And the limitations that were put on us. So with those sessions, one of the big things we did as a team was we visualized a lot, and we got really good at visualization, and that was our practice for those first few months. And we just ran through a bunch of simulations, like individually or together as a team too, and debriefed them. And it was a little different at first, but once we really created that environment in our head, it really, I felt like it really made a big difference, and we were able to really buy into that strategy.
Do you mind just explaining a little bit more about the visualization process and what sort of goes into that?
Yeah, so when we did do our visualization practices, we had a whole we had some preparation before we actually started to visualize. So we would do activities that would help prime our brain. So we would do these things called concentration grids, and we would, it's basically a 10 by 10 grid where there's numbers from 1 to 100, and you kind of just have to, they're randomly all over the grid, and you kind of just go counting 1 through 100 until you're done, and you're trying to do it as quick as you can, just to kind of wake up your brain. And then after that, we would do some deep breathing, and then once we got into the visualization part, we would just either lie down on the ground, on the bed, sit in a chair, or just stand up and pretend like we're holding a bat or holding a glove. And that's when we would just close our eyes and try to really imagine the situation we wanted to be in. So for example, if I was just visualizing myself at practice taking ground balls, I would close my eyes and really try to think about the facility I'm at, or the diamond I'm at, the dirt, how hot it is outside, like is there wind, am I feeling it against my skin, what does it smell like how does my glove feel on my hand, and then just visualizing me taking a ground ball, throwing it to first, and then on repeat.
You spoke a couple times now about the Olympics, and that's really interesting and really cool, but tell us your reaction when you found out that it was canceled or postponed.
Yeah, so luckily it wasn't canceled at the time. It was just postponed to the next summer. So thinking back to then, I think my emotions at that moment were obviously a little bit devastated, just because it wasn't happening that year. And for the past few years, that's what we were all shooting for, and that's what we all envisioned our summer of 2020 being. But when I realized that it was just postponed, not canceled, so that there's still hope that we can go and compete, I think my mindset changed. I was trying to, it was obviously easier to focus on the negatives with it not being this year and all of that, but I think just trying to spin that narrative and find the positives out of it. So with it being just postponed, we have an extra year of training, an extra year of getting better, and an extra year of just being together as a team, because our team's very close, and it's awesome just training with everyone. And I think just realizing that the journey with them is extended for another year is amazing. And at the time I was going through a little back injury, and I was kind of just getting out of it. So for me personally, it was great because I had another year to heal my back and be more prepared, so that I was fully ready to go for the Olympics.
Can you tell us a little bit about the guidelines and regulations put in place that your team has to follow to ensure the safety of everyone?
So when COVID originally came about, and the lockdown happened in March, so when it was super strict, we didn't train or we didn't practice together at all. But then once regulations started to be lifted, or restrictions started to be lifted in the summer, that's when we were able to come together as a little group here in Ontario. So our team didn't come together, but those who were living in Ontario, we had our little training hub here, so we were able to still practice together. And because it was the summertime, we were lucky enough to be able to train outside. And us being outside, like it definitely made it easier to be together and still be able to stay far apart, and then also just have the air circulation and all that stuff. So throughout like the summer, and we were able to actually push training outside all the way up until I think November, like early November, which is crazy just thinking about like the weather here in Toronto. So we were really lucky to be able to still train together. So with the restrictions, it was basically just we had to stay 6 feet apart at all times when we were outside. Other than that, that's pretty much all we had to really focus on. But when we moved indoors, that's when we had to just train with the mask the whole time and then still keep distance.
I'm especially interested to know because I know a few other athletes, and I know the struggle has been with the whole like mask wearing during sports. What's your stance on that? What do you think about wearing masks while we play sports?
Wearing masks during sports, like, yeah, it sucks, and it's not ideal. It definitely, I would say, like, it affects like how you breathe, like how you perform and all that. But I think they are important. I think that the government just enforcing that rule, I feel like it should be listened to, I guess. And yes, it sucks, but I think if we're able to still practice together, I think putting on a mask or even playing together, like I feel like putting on a mask and being able to do that is better than not being able to do that at all, especially if it can help keep numbers down with COVID and all that.
So looking back at other episodes, I know Phil's big question was what is one word that you would use to describe 2020? So now that we're in a new year, 2021, can you tell us what one word or one goal that you really want to strive for this year?
I think for me, my New Year's resolution for 2021 is to just really live in the moment and enjoy the moment I'm currently in. I think I've had times in my life where either I think back to previous moments or I think too far ahead. But I think watching some masterclass videos and then also doing some reading, I've really learned from the best, I've learned from the best, and like their advice is to really just focus on the current moment and what's going on there and be fully present in that moment. So whether it's enjoying time with family or friends that I get either in person or on Zoom, being present at practice and really taking it all in and appreciating the healthy body that I had to practice in, the facility that I can go to, and just the ability to play the sport that I love, I think is my biggest goal moving forward in 2021.
A great message, even for someone like myself. Like, I may not be an athlete, but I notice myself even at home doing like however many courses, household responsibilities. There's so much to juggle, and I think just living in the moment is great advice for anyone even. So thank you for that, Janet, and thank you for coming onto our show today. We really appreciate your time.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. I love being on here.
So everybody, that was our 4th episode of Project 19. Thank you, Janet, so much for joining us today and sharing your story, and we'll see you guys next time.